Hey guys, sorry, I'm on Twitter going back and forth with Typical God Girl. Shout out to you. I'll mention you when I post this video. We were talking about how it seems like guys don't open up to others, and in fact we do. We just open up to each other like girls open up to each other. We don't tend to go to a girl to talk about all our problems because, most of the time y'all think that we should be tough, we should be strong, but we're not always strong. But yeah, she said she guesses girls and guys aren't all that different. We're really not that different. I mean, if you really think about it, from my perspective, I've gotten to know a lot of girls fairly well, and I've gotten to know a lot of guys fairly well. I mean, I'm pretty great friends with both sides, and we're a lot alike, a lot more alike than y'all think. But back to the message, Pure Life family, how y'all doing this week? I asked you a question, how are you doing this week? Thank you, I'm doing pretty good too, thanks for asking. You might see my cat in the background. She's running around here trying to figure out what to do with her life, because she's lazy all the time, as you'll have seen by the pictures on my Twitter feed. She might jump in my lap, I don't know. I was looking for something. I had it. It was like right here, and I don't know where it. Oh, it's behind you. Not, 1 second. Okay. Okay, so tonight I'm really going to talk about forgiveness, and that's a really hard thing to really understand. Is how are we supposed to let go of the things people do to us, or how are we supposed to let go of something God allowed to happen, like maybe a parent dying, or maybe one of your friends like stabbed you in the back, and you just feel like, how can you how can you go back, and how can things be normal again? And I want to give you an example of two people in the Bible who actually let something come between them, and then it stopped them from doing things together, performing miracles, getting God's word out. Leave the paper alone. Shh, be quiet, I'm trying to talk. Sorry. And their names are Paul, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. He was notably the, how can I put it? I don't want to say the biggest Christian, but he reached more people than anyone I've ever heard of. It was because of him that thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands were saved, because he was preaching the gospel to people. So there were him, and then Barnabas, and some of you might be familiar with Barnabas. All of this is coming from the book of Acts. If you read that, it's a pretty good book. You should probably do that. It's about all the disciples and all the missionary work that they did, the miracles, and all the people they were able to reach. Let me find my Kindle Bible real quick. I'm using a Surface, by the way, not an iPad. I don't like Apple. If y'all have read the About Us page, you know that I'm pretty anti-Apple. I'm all Microsoft, so this is a Microsoft Surface. Windows Surface, I don't know what they call it. Probably Microsoft Surface. And for the record, I'm going to be reading from the King James Version of the Bible. It's the only version I believe that we should read. It's the complete Word of God. Unlike every other version out there, really. I mean, if you go into the history, you really research it, you'll find out that every other version does not come from the King James Bible. Also, that to even make a new version, get away from the camera, get away, thank you. Every other version, to even make a new version, they have to change 6,400 words in the Bible. And you know, there's this one verse, I'm sure you've heard it, that says you shouldn't add to it or take away from it. And by changing those 6,400 words, they are taking away and or adding meaning to the Bible that God didn't intend. So the King James Bible is the one and only version that I believe we should read. And later on, I'll provide a whole... Get away from it. Get away. Go. Sorry, my cat. I will provide why, scripturally, historically, and logically, why it makes sense to read the King James. It's also on a 5th grade reading level. That was I think that was a 2006 study. So it's really not that hard to understand. Anyway, back to the message. Forgiveness. We're gonna go to Matthew chapter 18, or was it Matthew chapter 20 verse? I'm getting there. I promise. There it is. Holy Bible. It has to download. Dun, 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 dun. The Bible's a really big book, so this is taking a while to download. But it's almost there. I don't know if you can see it. Bum, 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 bum. You know what? Why don't I just get my actual Bible? It's down somewhere. Okay. I just wanted to see if I could use that because I kind of like it. It's a little lighter than this. Okay, Matthew chapter... It must be chapter 18. Okay. Okay, well, yeah, we're gonna back up. Matthew chapter 18, verse 15. Jesus was talking to his disciples. They were all having a discussion, they were asking him questions, he was answering them, asking him questions back and forth, Q&A, 20 questions with Jesus. Okay, so I'm gonna read the verses first and then I'll explain them. Verse 15. Moreover, if thy brother shall trespass against thee, go and tell him his fault. Wait. Hold on, wait. Wrong. I'm sorry. I'm gonna edit this. Verse 21, chapter 18, verse 21. It says, Then came Peter to him and said, Lord, how oft shall my brother sin against me, and I forgive him? Till 7 times. He was asking 7 times, because back then the Pharisees, the religious leaders of the day, they taught that after you have forgiven someone 7 times, if they continue to do you wrong, you don't forgive them anymore. You don't have to. Verse 22, Jesus saith unto him, I say not unto thee until 7 times, but until 70 times 7. Now what he's saying is you will forgive him all the time. You should forgive him all the time. Anyone who does you wrong, you should forgive them. Now, let's think about this though. Jesus died on the cross so that God could forgive you, right? And he didn't die on the cross just to forgive you for one little thing, for one lie, or for 7 lies like the Pharisees taught, or for 7 wrongdoings. He died to save you and forgive you for everything that you've ever done and will do. He died. I'm getting kind of emotional here. He died for me. He died to forgive you for everything, no matter what. I mean, John 3:16 says it best, that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. Whosoever. That's anyone, no matter what you've done, no matter what your race is, your creed, your sexual orientation. God doesn't hate gays, by the way. He loves everyone equally. No matter what you've ever done. Look, I'll open the door later. Shh, I'm trying to talk. Whether you've killed somebody, I doubt that any of you have, but if you have, God died for you too. Whether you lie about every little thing you do, God died for you, and he still loves you. So, he died to forgive you for everything. So to say that you're only going to forgive someone 7 times... Okay, let me open the door real quick. Back. Okay, to say that you're only going to forgive someone 7 times, and after that they're it? Could you imagine if God were to only forgive you 7 times, and then he was done with you? We'd all be going to hell. There would be no person in heaven. Not one. Because everyone sins at least more than 7 times in 1 hour. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me move on to verses 23. And the title of this section in my Bible, it says, Parable of the Unforgiving Servant. Now, this is basically how we are, and the king in this story is God. Just read it, listen to it, it'll make sense. Therefore is the kingdom of heaven likened unto a certain king, which would take account of his servants. And when he had begun to reckon, one was brought unto him, which owed him 10,000 talents. But forasmuch as he had not to pay, his Lord commanded him to be sold, and his wife and children and all that he had, and payment to be made. The servant therefore fell down and worshipped him, saying, Lord, have patience with me, and I will pay thee all. Then the Lord of that servant was moved with compassion, and loosed him, and forgave him the debt. But the same servant went out, and found one of his fellow servants, which owed him 100 pence. And he laid hands on him, and took him by the throat, saying, Pay me that thou owest. And his fellow servant fell down at his feet, and besought him, saying, Have patience with me, and I will pay thee all. And he would not, but went and cast him into prison till he should pay the debt. So when his fellow servants saw what was done, they were very sorry, and came and told to their Lord all that was done. Then his Lord, after that he had called him, said unto him, O thou wicked servant, I forgive thee all that debt, because thou desiredst me. Shouldest not thou also have had compassion as thy fellow servant, even as I had pity on thee? And his Lord was wroth, and delivered him unto the tormentors, till he should pay all that was due unto him. So likewise shall my heavenly Father do also unto you, if ye from your hearts forgive not every one of his brother their trespasses. Okay, so basically, there was this servant of a king, right? The king, he would judge every single one of his servants, just like God will end up judging every single one of us. And there was a servant that came and owed him 10,000 francs, I believe it. Not francs, because that's French. 10,000 talents. Talent. I don't know how much that is, but it sounds like a lot. 10,000's a lot. That's just a big number, so of course it's a lot. And so the king was going to say, sell him, his wife, his kids, and everything that he has to someone else. Because I need that money. That debt needs to be paid. And God felt the same way. That our sin debt needs to be paid. But the servant fell down and worshipped him. Just as we fall down and worship God and ask for forgiveness, he asked for forgiveness and patience, saying that he will pay them all. And the Lord, the King, was moved with compassion. And said to go out and that he had forgiven him his debt, which is what God does to us if we come to Jesus. But then the servant went to another servant who owed him money and nearly killed him, trying to get the money back. And the servant said he couldn't pay it. Have patience for me, or with me, and I'll pay it all. And he threw him into prison. So, I mean, don't we do the same thing? I mean, God has forgiven us for everything, and yet we have the audacity to not forgive others when, as you could see, the debt was less. He owed the king 10,000 talents. That other servant owed the first servant 100 pence. 100. Just a little bit. Isn't that how it is with us? I mean, we owe God a lot, but he forgives it. And then we go and we hold grudges against somebody, maybe because they said something bad about us, something tiny, really small things. And so then later on, as I said, the king comes to the servant and he said, should you not have compassion for your other servants as I have had compassion for you? So basically what Jesus is saying is, shouldn't you have compassion for each other because I'm about to go on the cross to die for you? I mean, to forgive you for everything that you're going to do in the future, everything that you have done in the past. I mean, that's like a huge slap in the face, if you want to be honest. I mean, say you're like, well, because that's putting rankings to sin. There's no worse sin than the other. Lying is just as bad as killing somebody. The 10 Commandments are all equal. You break one, you break all of them. What was I going to say? Oh, but say you were a thief or something, and then you come to God, and he forgives you for everything, and then somebody steals from you, something small like a pen, when you've stolen so much from other people, you've sinned like crazy, and just not even, forget God, like the whole world wants to be right now, forget God. And then you don't forgive that one person for stealing that little thing from you when God forgave you for everything. I mean, you might as well go up to the big man and slap him in the face, because that's really disrespectful. That's just wrong. So what Jesus is saying is we need to forgive everyone for anything they've ever done against us, because God's forgiven us for everything. Why should we not forgive? Why can't we have the same compassion that he has for us to forgive others? And I mean, I know firsthand how hard it is to really forgive someone. I've been hurt before, emotionally, not physically. It's just stuff, that you continuously think about, and when you're around that person, you're like, how could you do that to me, And it kind of causes you to be bitter. I mean, if you're not forgiving someone, then you're bitter. And why do you want bitterness? Because that's just pain, Speaking of bitter, that's a good song to listen to by Andy Mineo. I'll post a link on this video. Should be somewhere on the screen. Look, here or here, probably here. It's probably going to be here, maybe there. Or maybe it could be, I might be holding it up right now, I don't know. That would be cool. Whoa. Weird sensation. Sorry, back to the message. So, Jesus was telling his disciples, and Paul, I believe Paul was one of those, wasn't he? If not him, I think Barnabas was. Pretty sure both of them were. Anyway, so he's telling them to forgive, 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 forgive again and again and again and again and again and again and again. Now, don't get me wrong, this doesn't mean you let people walk all over you. That means you just forgive them. You let go of what they did. standing up to someone doesn't mean that you're not forgiving them. Okay, don't be weak. You know, if someone's bullying you, then you're like, hey, I forgive you for everything you did. But that doesn't mean next time they bully you that you just let them, take it. That's not what forgiveness is. So, anyway, back to what I was saying. Okay, Acts. Let's move to the story about Paul and Barnabas. Acts chapter... hold up, I'm getting there. Paul... Acts chapter 15, verse 36. Okay, and the title right here is Separation of Paul and Barnabas. Now, okay, a little bit of background story. These guys were like best friends. They were like, for those of you who know anything about me and Tyler, the other guy running this, running Pure Life, he and I are like, I mean, we're close. We're really close. Like, we go shopping together. I mean, I'm not afraid to say that. We go shopping together. We hug each other every single time we see each other, and when we leave each other. I mean, we love each other. We're like brothers. What's wrong with that? So these guys, I mean, they did like everything together. They had gone everywhere, and they had set up churches, and they were, witnessing to everybody, and people were getting saved, and it was like, glory to God, praise Jesus type stuff. It was good. It was good. It was awesome. But they got separated, and it all had to do with forgiveness. Well, and the effects after it have a lot to do with forgiveness. So I'll read it to you. It's a few short verses. It's 36 through 41. And some days after Paul said unto Barnabas, Let us go again and visit our brethren in every city where we have preached the word of the Lord, and see how they do. So they were wanting to check up on everybody. Paul was like, hey dude, why don't we just go around to everybody, make sure they're doing well, if they need words of encouragement, let's preach to them again, whatever, blah, blah, blah. See how they're doing. Have a potluck or something, I don't know, barbecue. And Barnabas determined to take with them John, whose surname was Mark. So basically his name was John Mark. This is the guy who wrote the book of Mark. And he wrote that book later. I'll get to that later. But Paul thought not good to take him with them, who departed from them from Pamphylia, and went not with them to the work. Basically what that's saying is John Mark abandoned them. He was with Paul and Barnabas originally when they had went out and started preaching, but he got a little homesick and he went home and he never came back. So Paul was he was really irritated by that, he felt betrayed. And the contention was so sharp between them that they departed asunder one from the other, and so Barnabas took Mark and sailed unto Cyprus. What that's saying is the disagreement between Paul and Barnabas on whether or not to take John Mark was so sharp, as in so jacked up. They were so angry at each other on this tiny little disagreement that they split up and they never did anything again. Ever. They never... You can read the rest of the book of Acts. You will see that they were never together again. After that, they had nothing to do with each other. They didn't talk to each other. They didn't perform miracles to each other. They didn't witness with each other. They didn't set up churches with each other like they had done before. It's like they had never knew each other. And Paul chose Silas and departed, being recommended by the brethren unto the grace of God. And he went through Syria and Cilicia, confirming the churches. So Barnabas, here's what happened. John Mark, like I said, he went with Paul and Barnabas, and then abandoned them because he wanted to go back home. So he'd kind of fallen off the path. He's one of I guess you could say he's a good example of the Christian that falls off the narrow path. But Barnabas, how he felt about it, he was like, why don't we take him with us so that we can try to help him out, encouragement. Because that's what being a Christian is all about. I mean, if you see a fallen Christian, don't judge him. We're supposed to encourage each other. And that's what Pure Life 412 is all about. We're trying to encourage teens. We're trying to encourage you. I'm trying to encourage you right now to live for Christ. Be pure. So Barnabas was like, dude, we need to get him back. We need to help him out. Help a brother out. It's like he's stuck on the side of the road with a flat tire, and we need to fix that tire. But Paul, he was bitter, and he hadn't forgiven him. Paul, basically how he felt about it was that they would go off, and all John Mark was going to do was just leave him. He was going to leave him again, and he didn't want to have nothing to do with that. But Barnabas, he forgave him. He was like, man, we got to keep on giving him chances, And you can kind of imagine how this argument went. I mean, Barnabas was probably like, dude, do you know how much you've been forgiven for everything you've done by Christ, by God? I mean, Paul, let's be straight. I mean, he said it himself. I think it was him. Don't quote me on this. But I want to say he said he was the chiefest of sinners. Did he not? And he was forgiven all of that. I'm going to look that up real quick. And so Barnabas was like, dude, why not? And Paul was like, no. And Barnabas was like, yes. And then Paul was like, no. Barnabas was like, yes and no, and yes and no, no. And they just fight, and they just clash. And come on. This is like, basically about inviting a guy to a party. Okay, so here's how it goes. Basically, there's these two best friends, and they're going to this party for Jesus. They're like, woo, lock-in type thing. Real party, real festive and stuff, and they were all getting together for Jesus, praising Jesus, and it was all about Jesus, right? But let's say at the last party, this one dude that he left y'all because he didn't feel like, he wanted to go home. He didn't feel like praising Jesus anymore. And so, you're like, dude, why don't you want to praise Jesus anymore? And the other guy's like, oh man, it's okay, let's forgive him. Let's invite him to this party, and maybe we can get him back into it. And then this dude was like, no, because he's just going to abandon us and stop praising Jesus. And he just want to go home. That's kind of how this was. Basically they were going to go back to all these churches and praise Jesus and help him out. And he just didn't want to invite him because he was still bitter because he hadn't forgiven him. So that's what this is all about. This is all about forgiveness. But he didn't forgive him. And so, this is what I'm trying to say is, if you don't forgive, you could end up being enemies with your very best friend. Or, I know, or maybe, a family member, like one of your parents or your uncle or something, maybe they said some things about you and you just can't let it go because they're so close to you and you just don't understand how could they do that to me? But, bitterness only brings pain. Forgiveness is freedom. That's what this is all about. Paul was still bitter about that. And Paul and Barnabas had reached so many people. They had witnessed